The story begins on a rather somber note as we witness a devastating scene packed with dead people on the ground against the backdrop of a hellish world where a villain seemingly walks around the scene while the survivors try to hide from him. Suddenly, we're taken to a young boy awake in bed when he's actually supposed to be out and about during the day. The boy takes out his phone and sees that it's almost 1 in the afternoon, so he realizes that he's been goofing around for way too long. He gets out of bed and begins his daily routine, which starts off with freshening up and getting ready to go outside. He packs his bag and is about to step out to go to class, but takes a look at the compass on the palm of his hand as he tries to open the door. Regardless of what the compass says, the boy still steps out and continues on his way to class. He steps out of his house and aimlessly walks around the streets with a gloomy sky giving him company. After an extended period of silence, we finally hear the boy thinking to himself, and his first word is meaningless. As he continues on his way, the boy continues to argue with himself over whether his class is really worth the effort. He genuinely doesn't want to go to class, but has a counter-argument that he needs to do it. To add on to the confusion, he is suddenly attacked by thoughts saying, "She crying," which doesn't really make any sense on the surface. The darkness slowly consumes him, and he begins to feel the madness seep in. It doesn't help that there's subliminal messaging all around him, as can be seen by the graffiti on the wall behind him, proudly declaring God to be dead. Now, the boy hears someone calling out to him, but we aren't shown this person's face. The gloomy boy is asked whether he is going to class or not, but he doesn't respond. The mysterious person, revealed to be a blonde boy, brings up the same woman who is on the depressed boy's mind, but he simply tells him to mind his own business, after which he walks away. He heads to the underground train station with a look of frustration in his eyes, and he sits all by himself inside the train as it moves out of the station. Our hero looks around to see who's accompanying him, but once again, we aren't shown any faces, presumably because the boy doesn't acknowledge such traits in humans. The awkward silence continues for a bit, but then our hero hears some shaking, followed by a spraying sound. It turns out to be a can of spray paint, which is being used by some random men who have nothing better to do with their lives. Our hero simply judges them silently and watches on from a distance. That's when he spots a girl with a bandage on her nose, and seems to gain an interest in her. We finally get to see another face, as the girl takes off her hoodie and fights the graffiti goons with her martial arts. An intense battle follows, and the girl gains the upper hand for a while, but then the train makes an adjustment due to a curve, and it causes her to slip. This takes away her balance, and things get tricky for her, as the goon leader regains his position and attacks her. Luckily, that's when our hero decides to do something about it, and attacks the goon leader to protect her. As heroic as it may seem, the gloomy boy isn't as strong as he thinks, because the goon leader remains standing without any damage done to him. Our hero gets a punch to the face, but doesn't give up, and gets into an intense fight with the goon leader. Neither one of the boys is ready to throw in the towel as they exchange punches without any hesitation. After a while, our hero finally gains the advantage, and even uses his knee to deliver a knockout blow. This is good enough as a finisher move, but now, he's filled with anger and frustration, so he mercilessly beats down the goon leader with his bare hands. It's at this moment where we learn that the villain in the boy's dream was actually he, himself, as can be seen by the angle of his shoes. Luckily, our hero stops himself right before he turns into a killer, and reminds himself that he needs to go check on the girl. He awkwardly approaches her and asks her if she's alright. She doesn't seem to be in any pain or discomfort, so she calmly asks him the same question. The both of them just stare at each other without really saying anything, but our hero decides to break the ice, and he asks the girl if she had any particular reason for beating the goons. She shows off some arrogance and simply says that even if she randomly enjoys fighting people, the boy will not be able to stop her. This can very easily provoke him, and he chooses not to get into any kind of quarrel and agrees with the girl. She asks him if he enjoys getting into other people's fights, but he explains that his body was simply reacting when he saw her fall down. It was more of a natural reaction, rather than anything else. This answer impresses the girl, and then she calls out to an old man sitting inside the train. He gets up and walks towards our hero, after which he looks him in the eye, suggesting there's more to him than just being a depressed soul. The old man reveals himself to be a detective, and shares confidential information with our hero by mentioning the goons are actually part of a secret crime organization. They were inside the train to receive a special package, and were marking their pickup spots using graffiti. All of this starts to make sense, and the detective reveals that he was trying to record the process so that he could use it for evidence later. Unfortunately for him, the girl decides to be reckless, and got herself into a tussle with the goon leader, while the others manage to make it out of the train with the package in their hands. Our hero is a little confused by this, because normally, trains are supposed to have cameras inside them for security purposes. However, the detective explains that there are no cameras in this particular train, and this only adds to the suspense. Realizing that he's now become a part of something much bigger than himself, our hero wonders what's going to happen next. The detective gives him a couple of options. He can either walk away and pretend like this whole thing never happened, or he can take the detective's card and begin a new life like never before. The idea of normalcy doesn't sit right with the gloomy boy, and this could just be the change he's looking for. So he takes the detective's card and walks away while saying he's going to think about it. It's back to the regular now for our hero as he walks on the street again, surrounded by normal people talking about their normal problems. It's a bit of a mess inside his head as he's clouded by so many conflicting thoughts that it might be hard for him to focus on a singular thought. With the night setting in, it's safe to say that he's not going to class anymore, so he makes his way back home. In the middle of his way, he finds an abandoned tunnel which is blocked by barricades, but then he sees some train lights flashing at him, so it comes closer. Our hero is blinded by the lights, but then he snaps out of it and spots a streetlight in front of him instead. He gets seated on a bench, alone as usual, with the moon shining upon him in all its glory. Our hero thinks about what he's doing in his life, and the thought is by no means encouraging. The deadly thoughts in his head start to take over him again, and it's a tough mental battle to overcome. He opens the compass in his hand and calls out to a woman named Eve. He apologizes to her and says he doesn't think he can make it any further in this pathetic life of his. He believes he's reached his limit. But that's when he hears the sounds of cans rumbling and spots the fighter girl grabbing some soda by the vending machine. The both of them share yet another stare with each other, and this time, the girl breaks the ice by offering our hero some soda. She gets straight to the point and asks him if he's made a decision yet. After a few seconds of careful consideration, he states that he will join her and the detective, but not as some random pawn who can be easily disposed when push comes to shove. He adds on to it by saying he'll definitely even the scores if he has ever deceived during this new relationship. The girl comments that he has an excessive sense of confidence for a man who was barely able to beat someone of his own size. This makes the boy realize his limitations, so he apologizes for talking like some kind of big shot. However, the girl reassures him that his intentions are fully understood. She says that even she needs to apologize for being rude to him earlier, but that was simply a part of the test that the detective had devised for him. Now, our hero asks the girl why she recruited him, but she simply opens up her soda and gulps some of it down before saying that his words reminded her for her dad, especially the part when he said that his body naturally moved after seeing her in distress. It was this that primarily motivated her to bring him onto her side, and she also acknowledges that it's not really a good enough reason to recruit someone into a mission so dangerous. Despite this, our hero is fine with everything because he is doing this out of his own free will. He also doesn't think it's selfish of the girl to choose him on such a basic premise because he had faced much worse people all by himself. Our hero even gives the slightest hint of a smile, which is extremely rare given the state of his mind. The girl is unaffected by this and simply tells him not to regret anything later on, during his time with her. This somewhat romantic moment between them is abruptly broken when a goon shows up chanting the same word again and again, while he smashes the floor with his bat. Both our hero and the girl manage to evade the attack, and the gloomy boy decides to use his soda can as a weapon. He doesn't really do any damage to the attacker, but it manages to distract him long enough for the couple to run away in one piece. The girl is confused by this act of cowardice, as she believes that they could have defeated their baseball attacker together. The boy has his own doubts about that statement, but explains that the real reason why he chose to run away was to avoid violence. This is because he doesn't really like engaging in fights, unless it's absolutely necessary for him to do so. He adds that one should never place too much confidence in their personal strength, because it will inevitably lead to their downfall during some point in their life. As he says this, the baseball attacker activates his red eyes, and we can see an entire clutter of red eyes waking up behind him. The chase is on, but after a while, our hero decides to take a break next to an alley so that he can catch his breath. The fighter girl is amused to see his stamina, but he reasons that the baseball attacker might have lost track of them by now. Feeling reassured, the couple decides to explore this new town they've run into. The girl says she's somewhat familiar with the place because she used to come here often to work with the detective. However, she maintains that the both of them are lost over here. There's no point asking for a phone either, as it turns out that the girl had broken her phone a couple of days ago. There's no end to the entertainment just yet, because the couple locate themselves inside a train station in the middle of the night, with nothing but red lights to give them eerie company. In front of them is also a giant signboard that was originally an ad for the military, but is now being destroyed by graffiti to form a nihilistic message. Tensions rise as the girl asks the hero what he's doing right now. He hesitates before answering, but eventually mentions that he's studying after beating around the bush for a bit. However, just as he's about to resume his answer, the blonde boy from earlier makes his appearance. Seeing him makes our hero's heart beat erratically, so he decides to run away with the girl because he doesn't want to face such a disgusting feeling. However, the blonde boy doesn't allow them to get too far away, and he sends his goons to chase after them. Panic strikes our hero as he doesn't know what to do, and all the voices in his head only make things more difficult for him. After a lot of instinctive thinking, he decides to take a right turn into an alley, but he starts to run out of breath and tries to figure a means of escape. The goons start to close in on the couple, and one of them even corners our heroes. This leaves the girl no choice but to show off her fighting skills in an impressive sequence. She gives the goon a run for his money, but doesn't realize that there's another one behind her just waiting to land a strike. That's when our hero shows up from behind and protects her from the blow. He's obviously frustrated by how reckless his counterpart is, so he releases his frustration on the goon by mercilessly punching him away. He lands a finisher kick move, but this triggers his inner demons once again, and he struggles to keep it together. The girl asks him if everything is fine, but he lies to her and says he's just out of breath. Anyway, she thanks him for saving her, and they decide to work their way out of this mess. That's the end for now. Like, share, and subscribe to see more. See you later.